The wailing cut through the airplane cabin like a siren, drawing glances from every direction as passengers shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Rachel Martinez held her 6-month-old daughter, Sophia, tightly to her chest, murmuring frantic apologies to anyone within earshot. The baby's cries bounced off the tight walls of the economy cabin, amplifying every piercing sound. Rachel felt the sting of countless judging eyes pressing down on her, their silent criticism heavier than her carry-on. "Please, baby, please," she whispered, gently rocking Sophia as tears of exhaustion welled up in her own eyes. She hadn't slept in nearly 2 days, having just come off back-to-back shifts at the diner before boarding this late-night flight from Los Angeles to Chicago. The ticket had emptied her savings account, but she couldn't miss her sister Carmen's wedding, even if their relationship had been tense for years. At 23, Rachel bore the weary look of someone who'd been carrying far more than her share. Deep shadows lined her eyes, and her once bright smile had faded under the daily grind of single motherhood. Her ex had vanished the moment she'd shared the news of her pregnancy, leaving her alone in a cramped studio apartment barely fit for living. Each day was a cruel choice between diapers or groceries, formula or the power bill. A flight attendant with tight features and tired eyes stopped beside her seat, her tone clipped. "Ma'am, you need to calm your child. Other passengers are trying to sleep." "I'm trying," Rachel croaked, her voice thin and worn. "She's usually calm, I swear. It's just, everything's off. She hasn't slept, the noise." Her words trailed off into silence. She knew she sounded like she was making excuses. Sophia's cries only grew louder, and Rachel spotted more than one passenger raising their phones, no doubt recording her public humiliation. Her cheeks burned. She knew exactly how this would be spun, another inconsiderate mom who ruined everyone's flight. "Should have thought this through before flying," grumbled an older man nearby, not bothering to lower his voice. Rachel bit her lip, eyes brimming again. She had thought of other options. Driving had been her plan, until her beat-up Honda gave out 3 weeks ago, and the repairs were far out of reach. This flight had been her last resort, paid for with the money meant for next month's rent. She already dreaded the explanation she'd owe her landlord when she got back. Just as she started to rise, planning to retreat into the bathroom and cry where no one could see, a gentle voice broke through the chaos. "Excuse me. Would it be okay if I tried something?" Rachel turned to see a man sitting beside her. Mid-30s, immaculately dressed in a tailored navy suit with polished Italian leather shoes. His dark hair was styled to perfection, and a silver watch gleamed on his wrist. He looked like he belonged in first class, not crammed into coach. What?" she asked, thrown by his offer. "I've got some experience with babies," he said with a kind smile. "My sister has 3. I've picked up a few tricks. Sometimes just a different touch or voice helps. Would you be willing to let me try?" Rachel hesitated. She didn't trust easily, especially strange men showing sudden interest in her or Sophia. But something in his voice, his expression, felt sincere. And she was too tired to refuse help. "Okay," she whispered, carefully handing Sophia over. The moment the baby nestled into his shoulder, something incredible happened. Her cries tapered off into soft hiccups and then into silence. The man gently rubbed her back in slow, calming circles while humming a soothing tune, like a lullaby wrapped in warmth. "How did you?" Rachel began, her voice full of wonder. Rachel exhaled, stunned by the sudden silence. "Like I said, lots of practice," the man murmured, still rubbing Sophia's back in slow, rhythmic motions. "Sometimes, all a baby needs is a new view of the world, or a new set of arms." The cabin, moments ago filled with tension, now rested in a rare hush. Passengers who had just been throwing daggers with their eyes now glanced over with mild curiosity, even approval. The same flight attendant who had been curt earlier walked past again, this time offering a small smile and a nod of relief. "What's her name?" the man asked, expertly adjusting Sophia in his arms as though he'd done this 100 times before. "Sophia," Rachel said softly, still studying his face. There was a flicker of recognition, but she couldn't quite place it. "And I'm Rachel. I don't know how to thank you. I was about to completely fall apart. I'm James, he replied with a small grin. It's really no trouble. We've all hit that wall, maybe not with a screaming baby on a red eye, but still. With Sophia now drifting into sleep against James's shoulder, Rachel felt something inside her begin to unwind. It was the first time in days, maybe weeks, that she wasn't operating on the edge of collapse. She watched him cradle her daughter so effortlessly, how the sharp lines of his tailored jacket were now softened with wrinkles and a little damp spot from baby drool. He didn't even flinch. You're definitely not flying economy, are you? Rachel asked, a sudden realization hitting her as she took in his appearance more closely. James gave a knowing smile. Let's just say, sometimes I like to shake things up. First class can get a little too predictable. There was something in his voice, playful, maybe even secretive, that made her curious. But exhaustion was winning, and she didn't have the energy to dig deeper. As the soft hum of the aircraft lulled her, Rachel felt her eyes growing heavier. I should probably take her back, she murmured, though Sophia looked more peaceful now than she had in days. She's okay right here if you want to rest, James offered gently. Really? You look like you haven't slept in forever. Rachel wanted to say no. She was used to doing things alone, to never relying on anyone. But something in her body gave out, a mixture of relief, bone-deep fatigue, and the simple grace of being shown kindness. Are you sure? She asked, her voice thick with sleep. Absolutely. Get some rest. I've got her. Despite the little voice inside her urging caution, Rachel's body leaned in. James's steady breath, Sophia's quiet slumber, the warmth radiating between them. It all wrapped around her like a blanket. Her head gently fell against his shoulder, her guard lowering for the first time in a long time. What Rachel didn't realize was that James had noticed her the moment she boarded, saw the strain in her walk, the desperation in her eyes. He'd spent the past hour watching her try to keep it all together, and it had cracked something open in his chest. What she also didn't know was that James Whitmore wasn't just another traveler in coach. He was the CEO of Whitmore Industries, one of the country's leading philanthropic organizations, and this brief encounter was about to alter both of their paths forever. Rachel stirred at the sound of the captain's voice announcing their descent into Chicago. 30 minutes until landing. For a moment, she felt dazed by the comfort surrounding her. Then it hit her. Her head had been resting on James's shoulder, and Sophia still slept peacefully in his arms. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, she gasped, sitting up quickly, the warmth disappearing with her movement. I can't believe I just passed out on your shoulder, Rachel said, her cheeks flushing. You must think I'm completely out of line. James smiled, clearly unbothered. You were exhausted. Both of you needed rest. Sophia only stirred once, and I managed to settle her again. With practiced care, he handed the sleeping baby back into Rachel's arms. She's an angel like this, he added warmly. Rachel gazed down at her daughter's peaceful face, marveling at the difference when Sophia wasn't overwhelmed or overtired. She really is, she murmured. It's just, everything lately feels like it's falling apart. I'm barely keeping up. The words spilled out before she could stop them, and immediately she regretted it. He didn't need to hear her life story, especially not after being so kind. But James's voice was gentle, his eyes full of quiet concern. If you want to talk about it, I'm here. Sometimes it's easier to tell someone who's not involved. Rachel hesitated. She had spent so long keeping her struggles to herself, both from pride and from experience. People often offered help only to vanish the moment things became hard. But something about James's presence made her feel safe. I'm a single mom, she said softly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. Her father walked away when I told him I was pregnant. I worked double shifts at a diner in LA just to cover the rent on this tiny apartment. My car broke down, I'm behind on bills, and I used the last of my savings on this flight. She paused, swallowing the lump forming in her throat. My sister's getting married. We haven't spoken in 2 years, She thought I was ruining my life by having Sophia. She only invited me because our mom guilted her into it, before she passed away. I don't even know why I'm going. I guess, because she's the only family I have left." James didn't interrupt. He simply listened, absorbing every word with quiet intensity. When Rachel finished, she braced for the usual awkward silence or hollow sympathy. But instead, James looked at her with a kind of quiet awe. "That takes strength," he said finally. "What you're doing, raising a child alone, working yourself to the bone, still trying to mend things with your sister, it's brave. You might not feel it, but it's the truth." Rachel gave a half-hearted laugh. "You don't know me. Maybe I made all the wrong choices and ended up exactly where I deserve to be." "Maybe," James replied honestly. "But I've been watching you. From the second this flight started, you've done nothing but try to ease everyone's discomfort. You apologized to everyone, handled Sophia with so much patience. And now you're heading into a situation where you might not even be welcome, just because it's the right thing to do. That says a lot about who you are." His words hit her harder than she expected. It had been so long since someone genuinely acknowledged her effort. Her ex had always torn her down. Her boss acted like she was replaceable. Even her own sister had treated her like a cautionary tale. Trying to shift the focus, Rachel asked, "What about you? You never did tell me what you do. And you still haven't explained why a guy in a designer suit is back here with the rest of us in economy." James's smile turned thoughtful, and for a moment, she caught something guarded in his expression. "I work in business," he said simply. "Sometimes I prefer economy. You meet more interesting people here. First class can feel a little disconnected from the real world." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "That sounds like the most polished non-answer I've ever heard." She studied him. "Should I be worried I just spent the last few hours napping on a mysterious stranger's shoulder?" He chuckled. "I promise, nothing shady. Let's just say I'm in a position to help people, and I try to do that when I can, without making a big show of it." Before she could dig deeper, the captain's voice came over the intercom, announcing the plane's final descent into Chicago. Around them, the cabin buzzed with activity as passengers gathered their things and prepared for landing. "I guess this is where we say goodbye," Rachel said softly, surprised by the sadness creeping into her voice. She hadn't expected to feel such a strong connection to someone she'd met on a plane. "I really can't thank you enough. You saved me from complete humiliation, and gave Sophia the best rest she's had in weeks." James reached into the inner pocket of his jacket. "Actually," he said, "I was hoping I could give you something." James reached into his jacket and pulled out an elegant business card, cream-colored with crisp black lettering and a subtle embossed texture that screamed wealth and influence. "If you ever need anything," he said, offering it to her, "and I mean anything, please don't hesitate to call." Rachel took the card, curious, and read the name. Her eyes widened. James Whitmore, CEO, Whitmore Industries. A number. An address. Downtown Chicago. "You're James Whitmore," she whispered, stunned. Even working long shifts at a small diner, Rachel had heard of Whitmore Industries. They were constantly in the news, funding scholarships, building housing for single moms, launching job training programs for people who'd hit hard times. James smiled with a small shrug, his expression sheepish. "Guilty as charged. I was hoping to avoid the whole CEO thing. Sometimes I just want a normal conversation, without people either trying to impress me or ask for something." Rachel's mind whirled as the pieces came together. The expensive suit. His calm, kind demeanor. The casual way he'd helped without expecting anything in return. It all made sense now. But it also made his kindness feel even more profound. He hadn't just helped her out of pity, he had chosen to help without needing recognition. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she asked, still reeling from the discovery. "Because you needed help from me, James the person, not James the CEO," he replied. "And honestly, most people shut down when they learn who I am. They get nervous or want something. I liked talking to you just as me. The wheels touched down with a soft thud. Passengers immediately began rustling with seatbelts and overhead bins despite announcements to remain seated. Rachel stared at the card in her hand, torn between disbelief and something dangerously close to hope. This isn't charity, James said gently, noticing her hesitation. It's an opportunity, if you want it. The words echoed in her head as they taxied to the gate. Her instincts told her not to trust things that looked too good to be true. But there was nothing slick or sleazy about James. Just quiet, genuine care. Inside the bustling terminal, Rachel reached for her small, worn-out duffel bag in the overhead bin. The broken zipper snagged on the edge, refusing to budge. Meanwhile, James balanced Sophia effortlessly, cradling her like it was second nature. Here, let me. I've got it, Rachel said quickly, yanking the bag free. It was an automatic response. Help had always come with strings, or worse, disappointment. She had taught herself not to expect anything from anyone. They walked together through the jet bridge and into the terminal, the chaotic rhythm of the airport washing over them. Rachel felt increasingly aware of the contrast between them. James in his sleek, tailored suit moving with quiet authority, and her in scuffed sneakers and a thrifted coat, clutching her child and what little she owned for the weekend. "Where are you staying for the wedding?" he asked casually. "A motel near the venue," she answered. She didn't mention the online reviews complaining about the stained carpet and the heater that only worked if you kicked it hard enough. "It's nothing fancy, but it'll do. Sophia and I don't need much." James frowned slightly. Chicago's unpredictable in October. Some of those places don't even have reliable heat. "Have you considered—" "I can't afford anything else," Rachel cut in, sharper than she intended. Her face flushed with heat. "Look, I appreciate everything, I really do. But I don't need you solving all my problems. I've been getting by on my own for a long time." The words carried more edge than she meant, shaped by years of fighting to stay afloat and preserve her dignity. James held up his hands in a peaceful gesture. "You're right," he said calmly. "I overstepped." And in that simple, quiet response, he didn't get defensive. He didn't push. He just respected her boundaries. Rachel exhaled, her grip on Sophia tightening slightly as they moved toward baggage claim. She wasn't sure what came next, but somehow, something inside her had already started to shift. "You're absolutely right. I'm sorry," James said, his voice low and sincere. "I have a tendency to want to fix things, especially when I care about the outcome." They reached the baggage claim area just as his phone began to buzz insistently in his pocket. James glanced at the screen and sighed. "I need to take this," he said apologetically. "Work emergency. Give me just a minute." He stepped a few paces away, answering with a crisp, professional tone. "Whitmore here." Rachel watched him transform. Gone was the gentle, empathetic man who had soothed her baby and made her feel seen. In his place was the CEO, confident, polished, unmistakably in control. His voice remained quiet, but his presence seemed to command the space. Other travelers turned to glance at him, some whispering, clearly recognizing who he was. "I understand the timeline is critical," James said into the phone. "But we cannot compromise on the vetting process for the housing program. These are single mothers we're talking about, not just numbers on a spreadsheet." Rachel froze. Housing program for single mothers? She shifted slightly, trying not to make it obvious she was listening. "No," James continued, his tone firm. "I want to personally review every rejected application. If someone truly needs help and we turn them away because of bureaucracy, then we've failed at our mission." Rachel's stomach dropped. A cold knot of realization formed deep inside her. Everything she had told him on the plane, her financial struggles, her status as a single mother, her unstable housing situation, was now echoing in this very phone call. And James ran programs for women like her. When he returned, slipping his phone back into his pocket, Rachel didn't meet his smile. She was staring at him, eyes narrowed, expression tight. That housing program you mentioned, she said slowly. How long has Whitmore Industries been running it? James looked surprised by the question, but answered readily. About 3 years. It's one of our cornerstone projects. We've helped over 500 families transition into stable housing. He smiled faintly. It's something I'm really proud of. And how do people usually get into the program? Rachel asked, her tone sharper now. James hesitated, sensing the shift. We have outreach coordinators. Some families are referred through social services or nonprofits. Others find us through word of mouth. Rachel nodded, a bitter laugh catching in her throat. How convenient. James blinked. I'm sorry. How convenient, she repeated, her voice rising slightly. That you just happen to sit in economy, right next to a single mother who fits your program's demographic perfectly. That you were so interested in my story. That you just happen to be the CEO of an organization that helps women in my exact situation. Rachel, James said, his expression darkening with concern. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting this wasn't a coincidence, she snapped. This entire thing, your help with Sophia, the friendly conversation, your mysterious business card, was all a setup, wasn't it? Some kind of soft pitch for your charity? Was I supposed to cry and thank you when you offered me a slot in your housing program? Is this how Whitmore Industries finds its success stories, by targeting vulnerable women on airplanes? It's not like that, James said quickly, his voice low and urgent. I swear to you, I didn't know anything about you before today. But Rachel wasn't listening anymore. Oh my God, she breathed, clutching Sophia closer. I can't believe I was so stupid. I actually thought someone cared. That someone was kind just for the sake of it, not because they saw me as a charity case. People around them were beginning to notice. Heads turned. A few passengers slowed their steps to listen, curious about the scene unfolding at baggage claim. James stepped forward, trying to calm her. Rachel, please. No, she said, her voice tight with emotion. I don't need your help. I don't need your pity. And I don't want to be your next feel-good story for the evening news. The business card in her pocket suddenly felt like a burden. All of it, his warmth, his kindness, even his respect, now felt like manipulation. And James, standing there speechless for the first time since they met, looked like a man who had just realized good intentions aren't always enough. You want to know the worst part? Rachel's voice trembled as tears of humiliation stung her eyes. For a few hours, I actually felt like I was worth something. Like maybe I wasn't just some pathetic single mom who can't get her life together. But this whole time, you were just evaluating me, like some kind of case study. That's not true, James said, stepping closer, a note of urgency in his voice. Yes, I was traveling to oversee our Chicago programs. And yes, sometimes I fly economy to stay connected with the people we serve. But helping you, that wasn't calculated, Rachel. That was human decency. And getting to know you, that was real. I don't believe you, Rachel said, though something in his voice cracked against her resolve. People like you don't just randomly help people like me unless there's something in it for them. Her tone was bitter now. What were you going to do? Follow me to my sister's wedding and document how your charity turned my life around. James ran a hand through his hair, clearly distressed. I can see how this looks, he said, his voice quieter now. But you're wrong about my motivations. He hesitated, then added, I'm passionate about helping single mothers because I've seen what they go through. My mom raised me on her own after my dad left when I was 7. Rachel blinked, caught off guard. The anger in her chest shifted into something more complicated. James's gaze dropped slightly as he spoke, his voice full of emotion. She worked 3 jobs. We moved constantly. I remember nights when she cried herself to sleep because she thought she was failing me. Times she went hungry so I could eat. And somehow, she still held her head high, even when the world acted like she didn't matter because she was doing it alone. Rachel studied his face, and this time, she didn't see the billionaire or the polished CEO. She saw the boy he had been, the son of a woman who fought to survive, just like she was fighting now. Every woman we help through our programs reminds me of her, James added softly. Rachel's anger was faltering, but the hurt still lingered. Even if all of that is true, she said, it doesn't change the fact that you weren't honest with me. You let me pour my heart out while knowing you had the power to fix everything with one phone call. And if I had told you who I was from the beginning? James asked gently. Would you have spoken to me the same way? Would you have let me hold Sophia? Or would you have assumed I had an agenda? Rachel opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. He was right. If she had known he was a billionaire CEO, she probably would have kept her guard up, refused his help, and assumed he was expecting something in return. But before she could respond, Sophia stirred and began to cry, upset by the raised voices and unfamiliar surroundings. The sound cut through Rachel's emotional storm like a blade, grounding her instantly. I have to go, she said, adjusting Sophia in her arms. My sister's expecting me, and I've already made enough of a scene for one day. Rachel, please, James called as she turned to leave. Let me explain, just give me a chance to. But she was already walking, her heart pounding, her vision blurred. She didn't look back. She didn't know if she had just walked away from the answer to all her prayers, or if she had narrowly escaped becoming someone's charity case. The motel room was exactly what she'd expected. Stained carpet. A heater that rattled like it was dying. Walls so thin she could hear the couple next door arguing over takeout. But none of that mattered nearly as much as the ache in her chest. It had been 2 days since the airport. Rachel sat on the lumpy bed, trying to fix a run in her only nice dress, a simple navy blue piece she'd worn to job interviews and her mother's funeral. Sophia lay next to her, finally calm after a restless night. Tomorrow was Carmen's wedding. Rachel still hadn't decided if she actually had the courage to show up. Her phone buzzed. A message from her sister. Rehearsal dinner is at 7. You're still coming to the wedding tomorrow, right? Polite. Distant. No warmth. Rachel stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. She typed out a dozen different replies, some angry, some apologetic, some begging for forgiveness, but deleted each one. Finally, she settled on, yes, I'll be there. She hit send and placed the phone face down beside her. And for a long moment, she sat in silence, trying to gather the pieces of her heart, and wondering if it was still possible to put them back together. What Rachel didn't tell Carmen was that she'd spent the past 2 days replaying every moment of her conversation with James, wondering if she'd been completely wrong about his intentions. The hurt was still there, sharp, real. But now, tangled in it, was regret. A growing sense that maybe she had thrown away something genuine, not because James had lied, but because her own walls had been too high, too thick, too reflexively built. A knock at the door broke through her spiraling thoughts. Rachel peered through the peephole, expecting maybe the motel manager, or a pizza delivery meant for someone else. Instead, she saw Carmen, standing in the hallway, elegant in a cream-colored coat that probably cost more than Rachel's monthly rent. Carmen. Rachel opened the door, stunned. What are you doing here? Her sister stepped inside, glancing around the shabby room with visible discomfort. I came to talk to you. Before tomorrow. We need to clear the air. Rachel folded her arms. If you're here to tell me I don't belong at your wedding, save us both the time. But Carmen just sat, carefully, on the single rickety chair. Actually, I'm here to apologize. And to tell you something that might change how you feel about a lot of things. That, Rachel hadn't expected. Carmen, perfect, polished Carmen, didn't apologize. Not when they were kids, not when they were teens, and certainly not in adulthood. 2 years ago, Carmen began, when we had that fight about your pregnancy, I said awful things. I called you irresponsible. Said you were throwing your life away. Accused you of being selfish for having a baby you couldn't afford. I remember, Rachel said quietly. The words still stung, even now. What you don't know, Carmen continued, her voice barely above a whisper, is that I was pregnant too. Rachel blinked. You, what? Michael and I had been trying for months. When I found out you were pregnant with Sophia, I was furious, not at you, but at life. Because it felt like you got something I wanted so badly, and hadn't even planned for. Rachel stared at her, heart lurching. I lost the baby 2 weeks after our fight, Carmen said, tears rolling down her cheeks. And instead of calling you, instead of apologizing or asking for support, I threw myself into wedding planning, into work. I pretended everything was fine. But the truth is, I've spent the last 2 years being angry at you for having something I couldn't keep. Silence fell between them. Both sisters sat in it, grief, guilt, sorrow. Rachel reached for her sister's hand, and for the first time in years, Carmen didn't pull away. I'm so sorry, Rachel whispered. I wish I'd known. I wish I could have been there for you. Carmen nodded, wiping her eyes. That's not even the main reason I came. She took a deep breath. Yesterday, a man called my office. He said he was trying to reach you, that it was urgent. You weren't answering your phone. Rachel's heart jumped. James. Carmen nodded. James Whitmore. He explained you'd met on a flight. That there'd been a misunderstanding. When I told him I was your sister, he asked if we could meet. You met with him? Rachel asked, her voice rising in alarm. I did. And Rachel, you need to hear what he told me. Carmen leaned forward, eyes earnest. He said he's been looking for you for 2 days. Not because of any housing program or charity initiative, but because, she paused, eyes searching Rachel's face. Because he's in love with you. The words hit Rachel like a tidal wave. No, she said automatically. That's impossible. We only knew each other for a few hours. That's what I told him, Carmen said gently. But then he spent 20 minutes telling me about you. About how Sophia fell asleep in his arms. About how brave and strong you are. About how talking to you reminded him why he started his charitable work in the first place. Rachel sat frozen, emotions warring inside her. He wasn't talking like a CEO discussing a program participant, Carmen said. He was talking like a man who found something rare and lost it. Rachel's thoughts tumbled out. But the housing program, the timing, I thought. He explained that too, Carmen interrupted. Yes, he was in Chicago for work. And yes, he sometimes flies economy to stay connected with the people his company serves. But helping you wasn't part of some recruitment scheme. He gave you his card because he wanted to see you again, not to evaluate you. He didn't even expect you to need help. Rachel's voice was barely audible. Then, why didn't he just say that? Because, Carmen said with a soft, sad smile. He was afraid. Afraid you'd think he was trying to buy your affection with money or programs. He told me he's dealt with so many people who only see him as a wallet. He wanted you to know him, just James. Not the CEO. Not the billionaire. Just the man. Rachel's defenses cracked. Her anger, already weakened by time, now collapsed completely. Even if that's all true, she whispered, we come from different worlds. He's a billionaire. I'm a single mom living in a budget motel. That's the other thing, Carmen said, pulling out her phone. He asked me to show you this. She tapped her screen and opened an article. The headline read, From Homeless Shelter to CEO, The Untold Story of James Whitmore's Childhood. Whitmore CEO establishes single mother housing initiative in memory of late mother. Beneath the headline was a photo of James at a ribbon-cutting ceremony, standing in front of a modest apartment complex. Read the quote, Carmen urged gently, handing Rachel the phone. Rachel cleared her throat, her voice catching slightly. My mother, Maria Santos Whitmore, raised me alone after my father abandoned us when I was 7. She worked 3 jobs to keep us housed and fed, often going hungry herself so I could eat. This program exists because no child should wonder if they'll have a home tomorrow, and no mother should ever have to choose between feeding her child and paying rent. Santos was his mother's maiden name, Carmen explained quietly. She was a single mom from East LA who cleaned offices at night and worked in a factory during the day. James grew up in poverty, Rachel. He understands your world because he lived it. Rachel slowly sank onto the bed, the article still glowing on the screen. Everything she thought she knew about James was unraveling, revealing not a cold, calculating CEO, but a man who had known hunger, fear, and sacrifice firsthand. A man who chose to lift others, not despite his past, but because of it. "There's more," Carmen said softly. "He's here. In Chicago. He's been staying at the same hotel where my reception is tomorrow night." Rachel's eyes snapped up. "Why?" "Not to intrude," Carmen assured her. "He didn't even tell me where he was staying at first. But he's hoping you'll give him a chance to explain everything properly, to say what he couldn't before." "He's at your wedding venue?" Rachel asked, stunned. "I invited him," Carmen admitted, almost sheepishly. "After hearing his story, seeing how desperate he was to make things right, I thought maybe this was fate. Maybe you were meant to meet. And maybe I was meant to help fix what got broken." Rachel looked down at Sophia, who was gazing up at her with bright, trusting eyes. Her daughter deserved a man who would love and protect her. And Rachel, maybe she deserved to be loved, too. To be seen. "What if I'm not brave enough?" Rachel whispered. "What if I'm too scared of getting hurt again?" Carmen leaned forward, voice steady. "Then you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what if? And Rachel, you're the bravest person I know. You've survived everything life has thrown at you. You've raised a beautiful daughter through sheer grit and heart. If you can do that, you can take a chance on love." The next evening, Rachel stood outside the Grand Hotel ballroom. She wore an emerald green dress borrowed from Carmen. Simple, elegant, and the first thing in a long time that made her feel like she belonged in a place like this. Sophia was upstairs with a hotel babysitter, finally sleeping peacefully. Through the ballroom's glass doors, Rachel saw a swirl of celebration. Gold accents, soft music, dancing. Carmen looked radiant in her wedding gown, spinning in her new husband's arms, while laughter and champagne filled the air. And then she saw him, James, sitting at a table near the back, in a perfectly tailored black tuxedo, watching the entrance as if he'd been waiting for her all night. Their eyes met. And in his expression, Rachel didn't see pity or obligation. Not even just attraction. She saw love. Real, honest, overwhelming love. James rose from his seat and walked toward the door, never breaking eye contact. When he reached her, he stopped, close enough that she could see the hope and fear shining in his eyes. "I was afraid you wouldn't come," he said softly. "I was afraid too," Rachel admitted, her voice trembling. "But someone recently reminded me, being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing even when you are." James gave the faintest smile, eyes glassy. "I should have been honest with you from the beginning. Not about my job, but about how I felt the moment Sophia fell asleep in my arms. When you leaned on me and trusted me, something shifted. I knew my life had changed forever." "James," Rachel began, but he held up a gentle hand. "Let me finish, please." He took a breath. "I don't want to help you because you're a charity case. I want to build a life with you because you're the strongest, most genuine person I've ever met. I want to be Sophia's father, not because she needs one, but because I already love her as if she were mine. And I want to wake up every morning knowing I get to spend the day with the woman who reminded me what really matters." Rachel felt tears slip down her cheeks. Only this time, they weren't born of shame or struggle. They were joy. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I started falling for you the moment you took Sophia in your arms and made her feel safe," Rachel whispered, her voice unsteady with emotion. "But I was so scared, So scared of being hurt again, of being disappointed again, that I almost threw it all away." James stepped closer, his gaze tender as he gently cupped her face in his hands. "You never have to be scared of that with me," he said softly. "I want to spend the rest of my life proving that you and Sophia are the most important things in my world." As he leaned in to kiss her, Rachel felt the final pieces of her doubt dissolve. Sometimes, the most beautiful love stories don't begin with fireworks or grand gestures, but with small, quiet acts of grace, a crying baby, a stranger's steady presence, and the courage to trust again. That single moment of vulnerability had led her here, into a love she never dared to dream of. A love not just strong enough to change her circumstances, but powerful enough to change her entire world. When they finally broke apart, James smiled at her, eyes sparkling with joy. "So," he said, offering his hand, "would you like to dance? I believe this is where our real story begins." Rachel didn't hesitate. She slipped her hand into his, feeling the strength and warmth of it wrap around hers. Together, they walked into the ballroom, no longer a single mom and a stranger, no longer a woman struggling to survive and a man trying to help, but two souls who had finally found home in each other. As the music swelled and they moved onto the dance floor, laughter and candlelight flickering around them, Rachel held on tightly, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it as a family. And upstairs, tucked safely in a soft hotel crib, Sophia slept peacefully, dreaming, perhaps, of the loving future that was already waiting for her when she woke.